Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to everybody, no matter where you are. I'm Ray Orsini, and joined as always is my co-host, Mr. Matt Topper. How you doing, my friend?
Doing awesome. It's Sunday night without the Sunday night feeling.
Right? It's four-day weekend for me, 3-day weekend for most others. It's kind of nice. I honestly completely forgot about the show until you reminded me. So
And you didn't even get to share my awesome joke, which was we felt like a vCenter server because it said
right.
missing host at the top.
Yeah, no, I did appreciate that. That was solid nerd humor. Yeah, no, it's definitely appreciate that. There was another one that was said by whatchamacallit. I think it was Kevin Dukevich said something in the MMN Discord along the lines of like life there was no life before 1970, making a joke about
That
unit
was a good
time.
one.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
I
for
like that
sure.
one.
So Keith, I do need to hear your thanks for being in the chat, dude. Do need to hear your iced tea story one day. Would definitely love to hear it. But for now, Matt, tell me what you've been up to this past week, man.
Man, nothing too interesting or fascinating. We do have at some point a meta topic to figure out, which is that the New York Aaron Rodgers starts this weekend. So we're gonna have to think about scheduling on this and figure out
Yeah.
with football
Uh
season starting.
and there's
Uh,
no good answer to that. Like, and I'd love to hear from the chat like what you guys recommend. My thing is like Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, when like there's games every day at some point during the season. So like
right.
we're gonna have to bounce. Um but Sunday, Monday games, we have Tuesday wins and losses. I don't think we have anything Wednesday evenings. So that's probably safer. But we'll discuss privately unless you have an opinion you want to share.
So we do have to figure that out. Um, that's been on my mind. The start of football season, because usually for me, football season is not very exciting. The Jets are terrible every year, and this year they're exciting. So we're good there.
You're not
Um,
worried about it being a little older Aaron Rodgers, a little farther along in his career. I
no,
mean, this is
nope,
not,
not at
I mean,
all.
it's Aaron Rodgers. I mean, on one hand, you can make the Jordan analogies. Older, still got it, but I don't know, man. And I'm an Aaron Rodgers fan. I mean, besides the crazy shit he does, but I'm an Aaron
Yeah.
Rodgers like football fan for sure.
So without turning this into a sports show, by the way, I would totally be up for a sports show at some point.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Here's my take on it. The Jets were legit in that era of we're a quarterback away for real, and so with even average, slightly competent QB play, they're in good shape based on the rest of the roster.
as a lifelong Miami Dolphins fan, I we're always saying we're a QB away from, and every year this QB is going to be the guy, and two is going to be the guy, and we've heard that over and over. I'm not. I'm okay with talking about sports a little bit because the old cliche that MSPs don't talk sports ball. I found there's quite a few diehard sports fans, whether it's
Yeah, for sure.
football,
There's tons of
soccer.
them.
Yeah, man. And actually, we're planning on doing more and more. It's funny because all the discords I'm on now, every single one has a fitness slash move your body slash get outside and do something besides computering channel, and it's kind of nice to see. That's not something I've seen previously. So
I think it's becoming normalized in the channel.
yeah,
Um, I like to think I had some tiny part in helping with this by doing the runs at the conferences, but
yes,
it's
yeah,
everyone. Like something has happened over the past year or two, and it has very little to do with anything I did. Just something in this industry. It's becoming mainstream now. It's not this weird
it's
thing where everyone like to be
it's
into
great to
fitness
see.
anymore.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, between the morning runs, right? The 5Ks that seem to happen at a lot of events nowadays. In the last 12 months, I've seen them, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and then I think I had mentioned to you, Alex and I are planning. Alex Boyd, my Alex, we're planning a yoga thing in the morning at ITNC. We're gonna pick some grass, grab some water and some mats, and go do yoga outside. And if you want to see a fat dude do yoga, it'll be good fun. But for everybody else, nice way to relax before the start of the day. uh,
Yeah, for
I
sure.
know John Harden's working on a thing too. I'm sure he's already
Yes.
grabbed you on that. I don't want to spill the beans at all, but that
So I
sounds
won't spill
fun.
the beans except to say that your idea had the coolest name ever. So
See, we
we'll leave it
that,
at that.
now we gotta, that's a little bit of a tease, but I'll take it. Yeah, I don't believe for a second Keith is well balanced when it comes to sports teams. This is the longest I've ever seen him not talk about the Cowboys. So have you ever been grabbed by Keith Nelson and talked to about the Cowboys for an hour or two?
Well, no, because I wasn't around in the 90s.
There was Troy Aikman, and then it just went downhill from there. No, all right. So we're not here to talk about sports ball, although I do love sports ball. We're here to talk about some MSP conversations. Were there any that grabbed your eye this week?
So I stayed I stayed nice. I was around. I just wasn't doing IT work back then. I certainly didn't know Keith.
There you go. So
So no, I didn't look at. I actually stayed off of the internet for most of this weekend until today.
same,
I was out like doing stuff, which is weird.
same. I'm redoing my kitchen backsplash. This as you know, I'm on this like health kick, and
Mhm.
so I have tons of energy, and between the energy and my ADHD, like I have to be doing something. So now I have like my whole house torn apart, like doing little projects. Um, so
Anything good? So the
um,
backsplash is the big one currently, the main initiative.
Yeah, the backsplash just because it's nice and easy. Then I'm going to, I got to fill in some concrete in my kitchen where we lifted some tile when we did the new island, and then I'm going to repair some cabinets, and then I will probably do some luxury vinyl flooring,
Nice.
um, replace it throughout the house because why not? Drive my wife a little nuts. So, but
Cabinet. So I mean, of that cabinet sounds the worst. Like trying to line everything up and get everything level. That's just a nightmare.
So they're already done. I did them about 7, 8 years ago. My sister's boyfriend was doing. He's a carpenter. He had offered to do them. He's no longer around, which is probably for the best. The doors, almost half the doors have fallen down at some point. They're extremely heavy. They had the wrong screws, so I'm doing a lot of wood filler, a lot of reinforcing. Not fun, but
Yeah. Yeah.
we're gonna sell this house in the next year or two. I don't really want to blow another 15 grand on a brand new kitchen.
I
So
know it's a money sink.
yeah.
There is one super awesome part of doing your own work though, and that is every week just about you have an excuse to go buy some
Oh
expensive,
yeah.
awesome tool, right?
Oh
It's
yeah.
like I only need this for one thing. I'm totally gonna buy the like pro contractor version
For
anyway,
sure.
built like a tank
Absolutely. I
thing.
mean, I have to build a table saw. I have to, I have brad nailers, I have finishing nailers, I have everything. The only thing I don't have is a compressor because all my stuff is, cordless.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I have basically everything, and I can still find like, oh, I need to buy this, I need to buy that, and probably not the best idea. But I blame MSPs for that. That's an MSP thing. Get the new tool, get the new shiny.
It's just fun. It's just
It
fun.
is.
Buying like whatever hobby I'm into, buying gear is just super fun. And it's not a good use of money most of the time. It's just fun.
Yeah, yeah, it's all good. So I think we should start off on a high note. I haven't read this,
Okay,
so
let's do it.
I don't know how good this is going to be, but I haven't read this. It's titled "The Best Customer Ever."
If it's bad, we can discuss why it's bad. It'll be entertaining
There you
regardless.
go. There you go. So with a title like "Best Customer Ever," do you think this is a tongue-in-cheek post? Do you think this is legit? What do you?
I'm gonna guess it's legit.
I'm
I think
hoping.
this is someone talking about having a good experience. Now that I said that, I'll be totally wrong and it's like sarcasm, but I'm predicting that this is a positive story for
I,
once.
I'm crossing my fingers for positive story. So let's see what we have here. Best customer ever.
Oh
So as a
boy.
preface, this post is in good humor and is not a managed customer of ours. We're
Well, I
going
was
down
wrong then.
quickly. We sell Microsoft 365 to said customer, not a lot, just less than 100 or so. They manage with people who work in the business as they know technology. Oh, this screams CFO to me. Cool, not a problem. We don't care. They manage everything themselves, including 365. For whatever reason, they want us to sell to them instead of buying directly. Okay.
Okay, yeah, I've had some people
Oh,
like
yeah.
that.
Yeah, usually to like combine in a bill or some purchasing reason, whatever.
Yeah.
They apparently have to go through a security audit due to their insurance requirements. As part of this, they asked us to add security to their email. Cool. Microsoft has additional security tools. We offer them that and they agree. but when they sent us part of the questionnaire, it states a requirement for EDR, and the customer POC said it's only required for internet-facing devices.
There's so much to unpack in this paragraph so far.
Oh, you want to stop here and
We're
unload
still on
here?
like sentence 1 or 2, and they're talking about tailoring scope to meet internet-facing devices.
It's that customer that knows IT, right? Like that is such a red flag to me sometimes. Um, all right, so I'm like, it's not how it works. Then we come out to find out they have a server that's internet facing with no security. He was like, well, we'll put security on that. That's not. I tell him that's not
What
how
does
it
that
works.
mean?
I mean, these are maybe it's my old age, but these are the kind of conversations I wouldn't be able to keep a straight face with a customer,
Put secure
honestly.
like a security guard is standing next to the server?
Right? Like, it's like we let everybody wearing brown pants into the building, but if you're not wearing brown pants, you need security. Like, I don't get it. I'm not their IT provider, just a reseller of 365. Secondly, I have no risk in this. Third and finally, is this really how businesses think before it blows up on them with ransomware? I think that's
Wow.
probably the most powerful sentences in the entire thing. Um, do you agree they have no risk in this?
At first, I agreed with it, and it seems like they have started to go down the making recommendations and advisory role at this point, and so
Yeah.
I don't think that's an accurate statement anymore.
Yeah, I can already hear, like, Brad Gross in the background just, like, screaming, like, "Are you kidding me?"
Like,
Yeah,
if they wanted at what they were doing at first, just reselling licenses, that's the no risk
that's a VAR,
standpoint, and
that's
if they
everybody
wanted
gets,
to
no
keep
problem.
no risk, don't do anything but sell licenses.
Yeah, you know, no problem there. Customer asks for this, sell them the license, asks for this. A little bit of sales engineering. This is included in this SKU. This is not included in this SKU. You may want to purchase something. Cool. The minute they say the word questionnaire, that red flag pops up for me. And if you're advising on that questionnaire, you're assuming something. I don't know what you're assuming. I'm not an attorney. I don't play one on the internet, but you're assuming something. You're definitely putting the finger pointing in your direction. Um, I don't know. It's this to me seems like there needs to be a hard line of I'm only selling you licenses or we're providing IT services. Like there can't be gray
Yes.
area, right?
Yeah, making that interpretation or trying to figure out what satisfies those requirements, you I think you're assuming risk. I mean, we should get an attorney, right? If you're asking
Yeah.
this question, ask your business attorney. But um, to me, my untrained legal thing says you're taking on some risk by saying this satisfies that this doesn't.
Oh,
Um,
for sure, for sure.
and
Actually,
right, and there's the reputation hit, even if you're not legally, financially liable too.
like who wants to be that guy with that Yelp review or that Google review where it says, you know, my MSP told me I didn't need EDR except on my public facing servers.
Right,
Like, do you
right.
want that associated with your MSP? No, I don't think so.
Do you know what I
Um,
wanna know? They used the phrase in that post 2 or 3 times, "Put security on." What does
yeah,
that mean?
I know. Like, there's that one product that adds security to it, right? Like, you can almost hear like Jason Slagle that there's no silver bullet. Um,
Because if there's a product called security that I can just buy, my life would be a lot easier.
I mean, ConnectWise is the king of like one word like product names, right? Sell, manage, PSA, RMM. Do you guys have a product name security?
I never started calling anything by the new names, so
Me
I
either.
I don't actually know,
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Maybe there's a Microsoft product called security and we're all idiots. I doubt it, but you
right?
know,
If there are, I'm gonna go buy some and, like, do something else.
oh, for sure. Yeah, yeah. Just make my life that much easier. All right, let's see. Let's go to the comments. You want to take a guess? Pull a spooner, see what comments we're gonna expect.
Well, I mean, I took a guess on the content, so I was wrong once. Let's be wrong again. Um, my guess is that it was a lot of people having the same type of question and disbelief that we just did. I hope.
I hope. There's always the oh, it's a joke, but oh, we're too small. Nobody would waste their time targeting us, said the multi-million dollar company. Um, I've heard that before, sadly.
So here's the thing, though.
Mhm.
I have heard The phrase "we're too small, nobody would ever target us." I hear more in sales presentations than anyone ever actually saying that.
Um, I've heard it. I've heard the objection. Now, to be fair, I haven't been an MSP since 2017, but well, let me say it right. I haven't gone out and sought new MSP business since 2017.
Fair, yeah,
Um, the existing clients that I finally decommissioned like toward the end of last year, that's a different story. I had a relationship. I have rapport. My clients listened to me because that's a relationship we had on both sides. But I will say, like 2011 to 2016, 2017, yeah, I did get those more earlier. Especially like when ransomware just started picking up, like
yeah, like 2013 or
2011,
so.
2012, 13. Yeah, when it got really bad. Well, it's bad, but you know what I mean.
Yeah,
Um, when nobody knew what to do, right? Like, do we go buy Bitcoin? Do we like what do we do here?
right. How do we buy
Um,
Bitcoin?
and actually I did broker a deal for Bitcoin for one of my clients that got ransomware. They got ransomware before I got in. That's the reason they brought me in. But and they had Webroot, not blaming Webroot because it's exactly what I put on afterward, but um, you know, it happened. But their bank, BOA, wouldn't let them fund any Bitcoin purchases at the time. This is 2012, something like that.
Mhm.
And so they had transferred money to me. I purchased the Bitcoin. Obviously, with Bitcoin changing the value every 30 seconds, by the time I bought it, there was a little bit of leftover. I asked them, they said, just keep it. Like, okay. It was like fractions of a penny at that point.
Yeah,
And that
yeah.
turned into a couple $100. And so, yay.
Well, total
Um,
side note, I don't know about you. Somewhere in my pile of old drives is a Bitcoin wallet with like a couple coins on it.
oh, don't
And
get me started on that. Yeah. I
like I'm
guarantee
sure
I have a couple
everyone
there.
has one of these. Like I remember what was it, like 2010, 2011? Like, oh, that sounds cool.
Yeah.
Or that sounds kind of dumb. Like, let me forget about this. And man, where's the time machine?
Speaking of, I have here next to me, this says SensaCap. This is one of those devices that plug into your internet and then basically pay you for transactions that are right over your network. It's another cryptocurrency. I forget what it ties into like Amazon and some other shit. I've just never set it up. So basically, it's about you put an antenna outside your building, and it creates its own network, and they pay you for those transactions using your internet. Uh,
Huh?
so
That's
yeah,
cool.
it's still I haven't connected. I bought it like 2 years ago, but it's there.
It's
But
paying itself off. I see.
oh yeah, yeah, for sure. It's not the first thing I buy that's sitting in the box. So
All right, so yeah, I totally sidetracked us with that
yeah,
comment.
it's all
So
good.
maybe it's not an issue recently, or was different then. In recent history, I feel like I haven't heard that much, but it could be the
Yeah, I mean,
prospects we were
well,
talking to or whatever.
we have Keith, Sandy, Dustin in the chat. I mean, guys, if you do you hear that anymore? Do you hear we're too small to get hit? Um, Dustin with his insurance and his MSP. If anybody's going to hear it, I'm sure he's going to hear it.
Yeah, for sure.
So
Ignorance as a
yep,
solution.
ignorance
I
is a
like that.
solution. Yeah, I may use that in the future. They'll blame you for not properly suggesting properly implemented security features. I don't disagree with that. Uh,
No, right? I mean that's representing the jump from reseller to advisor.
oh, there we go. Frank comes in. I've had several potential clients ended up not working with them, argue that no one wants to target them. Okay, so
Okay, so that's still alive and well.
yeah. Let's see what Dustin says. One ransomware incident heard about firsthand. Little lady office manager went to Wells Fargo first thing in the morning, withdraw Bitcoin, and no one there had heard of it yet. Yeah, that's exactly what happened to us in 2011, 2012, whenever that was. Um, yeah, and so that comment right there from Sandy, that's why I always loved regulated clients when I was in MSP.
Yeah.
FINRA, FERPA, SOX, FDA, you name it, the HIPAA, HIPPOs, whatever. Anybody with a monkey on their back saying you need to do this, right? Legal has to keep contracts or documents for X amount of years. So does financial. So does education. Real estate, you have what, 5 years? Title, you have 7. And it was awesome because title was one of the first ones where the underwriters started demanding email encryption. Like there was nothing in real estate legal or real estate title, mortgage, anything in that industry, in those industries that required encryption. And then the underwriters for title said, no, if you're going to do business with us, you need to do these things. And it's awesome. It's awesome when you don't have to be the one saying, do this. Um,
Yeah, it's awesome in two ways. One, most likely you were telling them that, and it just takes away that antagonistic, I think they're trying to sell me something vibe, right? And you hear from a third party, and it sets you up for future recommendations too, because they hear that and say, "Oh, these guys know what they're talking about. They
yeah.
recommended it even before our, regulation or insurance questionnaire or whatever came in." It's hugely beneficial.
Yeah, I agree with this. MSP stopped being the boogeyman. He did correct it afterward. MSP stopped being the boogeyman when insurance started demanding.
Yeah,
And
for
yeah,
sure.
I mean, use it to your advantage. Why not? Um,
It gives you credibility.
yeah, absolutely. Let's see here. We got clients who are usually small, less than 15 seats. It's hard to get some of them to understand it. Um, Matt, did you ever have like, I know you said like, you hear this more in sales pitches, but um, did you ever have to combat this with a client? Did you ever have like, I'm just looking for some strategies of like how to get over that client mindset of we're too small to be affected.
The way that I would tend to explain it is to describe something else opportunistic, like any crime, really, right? And
Yeah.
so there's the targeted thing, and the reality is, if you're a big enough target to be targeted, especially if you get into like real threat actor groups and nation states and things, you're going to get compromised anyway. And explaining what you're doing is making yourself less of a target for the opportunistic threat actors, right? The guys who are
Yeah.
just looking to score on anyone that they possibly can, and hit your neighbor, right? It's no different than having like the security system sign and a dog at your house. It's not necessarily that you expect the dog to, actually like chase the robber down the street. It's that
Yeah.
the presence of them makes your house harder to get to.
Yeah, that was the and that's very similar to the analogy I used to use. People don't break into your house because they see an opportunity. They break into your house because you have a door. It's not, I'm not saying people don't sit there and jiggle handles and, check car door handles and stuff like that. Yeah, it
Yeah.
happens. But more often than not, like, and this is coming from when I worked at the police department, more often than not, it was they would go into a neighborhood and hit a string of houses back to back. It was just that's where they were at the moment. So, there's that. All right,
Yeah,
let's
right. It
see.
would be like the old days where you took the stereo faceplate off of the car before you went inside.
Oh yeah.
You don't really do that anymore, do you? I think
No,
those days are gone.
no, but I had plenty of those tires stolen, headlights stolen. Uh, people
Who
in
steals
car
a
now,
headlight?
they steal headlights are like $200, especially like on a BMW or something like that. They're 200-300 bucks easy because they're like all one piece. It's the most ridiculous shit. Um, it takes
On
them
some of
15
those,
minutes, but you go to the mechanic and it takes the mechanic 2 hours. Like,
right? I was
how?
gonna say, in some of those cars, if you get a headlight change, it's like a 2-3 hour bill because they have to take the whole car
Right?
apart to get the headlight out, or they claim they do. Maybe they don't actually have to do that.
If these criminals were mechanics, they'd be sitting pretty, real pretty. The people in car accidents are not targets. Shit happens. That's actually pretty damn accurate when you want to describe the being attacked.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a little morbid.
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, absolutely. Yeah. Fair enough. All right, let's see here. We have Write a Boom 2024. One of my favorite conferences. It was posted by Kelvin, so I'm not taking it as advertising. Um, we had posts most major events, specifically MSP GeekCon, want to shine a special light, Write a Boom, relay to Cyber Nation Cybercall. Early bird special just expired, but Andrew's been kind enough to keep it going until September 30th. I didn't even know what was going on. Uh, like
No, me either.
we're going to be there, but I didn't know the early bird special was going on. So if you haven't registered for Write a Boom, you have a few more minutes to buy it. Um, all right. There's the usual Kaseya posts. We can skip
Oh,
those.
jeez.
Um, Beyond the Cacbot takedown. That's interesting. Let's see what this
So
one.
the takedown, right, is noteworthy, although there's not
Yeah.
necessarily a ton for us to talk about. I'm curious what the beyond portion is.
So you want to give some background on the takedown first before we get into that?
I
Sorry to
didn't
put
see
you on the
anything but the
spot.
headline. I don't know. I
Okay.
don't have much to give.
I
saw
didn't
that
know
it
exactly
happened.
what it was because I skipped out on MSP Dispatch this week. Tom Lawrence covered for me, but so I heard something of it, but I honestly I've been super busy all week. All right, so for starters, I want to
So
highlight
we're really informing our audience that
right.
we weren't
Oh,
paying
okay. Yeah,
attention
yeah.
this
This is
week.
the FBI did. Okay, yes, the FBI had a win on this. I did actually. I think I reported on this 2 weeks ago. Want to highlight truly promising to witness FBI and the broader law enforcement community, and this is a USA thing. FBI is Federal Bureau of Investigation in the US. Taking part in these impactful large-scale takedown operations. A society increasingly depending on technology, we must see these operations compress from decades to months, weeks. CACBOT was up and running for 15 years. Wow, I had no idea.
Yeah, I didn't realize it was that long.
Yeah, so here's some observations. The way maybe it's too early to claim victory. Code of CACBOT or of QBot is very versatile and has been sold to other threat actors. We'll see CACBOT Lite capabilities and other malware, including those associated with EDR AV evasion. With the case of Lockbit, we'll see multiple variants of CACBOT. This is simply what threat actors are doing for a living. There are a minimum of 700,000 devices compromised, and we need to remember that CACBOT is an initial access vector. Typically, adversary is talking about lateral movement. We're all
Yeah.
aware of that. Lastly, it's yet to be seen how this will affect ransomware threat as a whole. In the 8 months of 2023 ending yesterday, ransomware was up 25% compared with the 12 months of 2022 by victim numbers. It'll be interesting to follow the aftermath of CACBOT. This seems like one of those serpent things where you cut off one head and there's always 17 others.
Yeah. So my thinking about this is that this is an interesting piece, but if I'm building a security program or if I'm an MSP thinking about what my offering is, it doesn't necessarily do me much as far as actionable things to focus on the specifics of one network, right? Or one malware strain.
Right.
Like I don't necessarily
You're not blocking for a
read that and
specific
take a different
malactor.
action
You're
on it.
just doing good practices, period, right?
Yes. And like it's interesting and I'll probably dive into it more, but it's not going to impact what I do as far as protecting my clients or even my own network necessarily because there's thousands of millions of different malware variants out there and different groups. And if I spend all of any significant chunk of time focusing on the specifics of this, there's like 100 other ways I'm going to get popped that I'm not dealing with. And so
Yeah,
just good best practices is what jumps out at me.
it's a winning story. It's a yay, but it really doesn't affect how we protect things. It doesn't affect how you're going to look at logs when you're like going after the fact. You're going to be like, oh, this couldn't be CACBOT. No, that doesn't work. So Dustin says, look at the Huntress piece for CACBOT is slick. Talk about that. So there's a threat advisory from last year with Ethan Tancredi, who's been on a couple times. Then they put out this year in June. This one, uh, oops, it was here somewhere. Dustin, if you have the link, send it to me on Discord, and I'll take it, please.
The risk of doing live.
Yeah. So I mean, but they have stuff here. There was one I saw that said something about vaccine. Hold on, Huntress vaccine files. There we go. So apparently these are vaccine files for CACBOT events, which is kind of cool.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. I mean, and then for those that are wondering about it, this is the actual article. I'll share one of the articles from Cybersecurity Drive. That's actually the talking about the U.S. takedown of CACBOT on the 30th.
Yeah,
So
and I don't mean to diminish that, right? That this is a
no, it's
super cool
great.
thing that happened and that's doing it. It's just that it's not actionable. It's cool and interesting, but not actionable on our part.
Well, it's funny because okay, so this is your world, right? You're the security evangelist. Um, when there's an event like Colonial Pipeline, for example, right? Or what was the Israeli one that was like air gapped with the science equipment? I
Oh,
can't
way
remember.
back, like the Stuxnet one?
Yes, Stuxnet. Thank you.
Okay, yeah.
When we hear of those events, then the events themselves they cause conversation. They pique interest of people involved. They give us something to talk about with clients. There's a lot of
Yes.
positive that comes from these bad events. I would like,
Yes, there's an
I'm a
awareness factor.
yeah, yeah, I'm a glass half full kind of guy. So, but when they, if there, when there's any kind of resolution or outcome, right? Whether it's like the colonial pipeline, finding the actors, whether it's whatever, it doesn't matter. You don't have that same kind of outcome. It's not that same kind of yay. It doesn't really. Besides a feel good, it's good for the news cycle. There's no real takeaways, are there?
I guess it depends on what it is, right? So you brought up Stuxnet, and aside from just being a novel attack vector, one of the results of Stuxnet was that zero day entered the vernacular for
Oh yeah,
non-security professionals, right? That was one of the first big things that really made zero days a mainstream topic of conversation, and just sparked conversations about what to do about them or how to respond to things like that. So um I guess to your point, yeah, it's a conversation starter, it's a sparker. It's not, even then, not necessarily going to lead to direct changes, right? Because as far as your program is concerned, install the update as soon as you can based on whatever testing policy you
right.
have, right? That doesn't change, but it makes you think about how do we limit the potential damage of zero days and things like that. So that's a good point. I like that.
I like to look. I like to go back and say, look at how they, because they never tell you how they responded, right? Like you'll never get like how the actual IR plan went down, unless it's like a Cloudflare or one of those that like to actually be very transparent about what goes
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
Um, but I do like to use those internally with my teams and say, okay, well, if this was us, how would you handle? What would be the plan of action? Obviously, there's a lot of what ifs. It's not much more than a role playing game at that point because you don't know infrastructure, you don't know protections. But some of the process policy stuff, that's universal, right? Like the phone
Yeah.
calls
The
you're
what
making.
happens if question.
Yeah. And so it's nice to get that. Um, I like to do that because it's one thing to say, okay, well, in our company, if this happens, what are we going to do? And we have our IR Bible and all the other fun stuff. But like getting them out of that headspace and looking at, okay, this is another event. Now, you and I both know the response is nearly identical, but the scale is a lot bigger, but the response is pretty damn close. Um, and so getting them to think outside of that and saying, okay, well, if I was in charge of this network, how would I handle it? It kind of gets those techs minds in a different space, which I like, which, I think is kind of cool.
For sure, right? So like when I do my what happens if presentation, I open it by saying, remember when the Kaseya thing happened, you can stand around and say, man, thank God it wasn't, what I use, or you can say what happens if or when it is the thing I use, and kind of go from there.
Do you
Um,
know what's the tail on that? So, like, my thing is this. So, like, we talk about Stuxnet. There are absolutely MSPs today that were not aware of Stuxnet. We can talk about Melissa virus. We can talk about I love you and all that stuff. And there are absolutely MSPs today that have no clue what the hell I'm talking about. So, what do you think the lifespan is for the Kaseya thing? Where like we're going to get to a 4th of July weekend, and we're going to be like, there's going to be a class of people that's not on their radar anymore. You think that's
it
5 years, four
it's going to
years?
be a while.
Yeah.
Because that has turned into a cautionary tale that you see in presentations all over the place. And maybe there are some MSPs that don't ever go to events or conferences, and they might not be aware of it. But industry wide, it was just such a big moment because the compromised RMM went from a theoretical worst case to an actual thing that
Yeah.
happened. Right, that was the change. I think it'll be
That's
quite a
scary.
while.
Yeah. I get I'm technically part of the media at this point, but I would love if the media would stop doing the whole, you know, team viewer used to infect thousands of computers or RMMs being used to infect thousands of computers and they're just using free trials of remote control software. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm
Right.
not defending TeamViewer by any means, but you get what I'm saying. Like, they're just fantastic news articles. In my opinion, they dilute the conversation of what people should be paying attention to.
They do. It's no different than saying like, you know, TCP/IP used in attack vector.
100% of internet
Down with
attacks happen over the
TCP,
network. Like, oh no, get rid of my Wi-Fi. No,
right?
oh, don't give Congress ideas, please. Okay, so quick question on support costs, office licensing
Oh,
requirements.
office licensing, that can take us the next 4 hours,
There you
maybe.
go. All right, let's go. Let's pretend they
No.
haven't mentioned M6 365 maps yet. So we're looking for guidance on Microsoft
Yeah,
licensing and
I'm not
what's
gonna know the
compliant.
answer,
Oh shit. Um, we
nor
have a
does
non.
anyone else, so it's okay.
Yeah, it's okay. Have you ever? Let me ask a quick question because we all get those V slash or V hyphen vendor emails for licensing audits over our careers. Have you ever responded to a single one of them?
I have used them to true up licensing on clients that I know needed
Oh
true
wow.
ups. We have had clients that had to go through real audits
Yeah, the
too,
real
not
ones
just
that are
those.
non-vendor. For those, in case you guys don't know, like when you get an email from at Microsoft.com, if it says V hyphen, that's an outside contractor. And I'm not going to say those are safe to ignore. I'm just going to say I may or may not have ignored every single one in my entire career. Um,
Yeah.
now, if you get one that's not a V hyphen, jump on that shit because yeah. Um, so they have an
Um,
NPO with mixed licensing, 10365 premiums, non NPO donation, and 200 365 E2s that are going to be discontinued and converted to business basic. Understand the 10 business premium give access to Entra ID Plan 1 and into, oh, this is going to be one of those, do I have to license everybody things? Entra ID 1 and Intune Plan 1. Microsoft cannot restrict some of the tenants on a per user basis. So the whole tenant, yeah, we know that.
I had to think about what Entra ID was for a second, by the way.
Yeah, it's if I hadn't reported on it, I'd be questioning the same
Like, oh,
damn
what's
thing.
that? Oh, right.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna call it Azure. So the client uses some features from the Azure Plan 1. Well, it wouldn't have been Azure Plan 1. It would have been shit. Because they're using Entra to replace Azure, but it's also starting with security services. So this is gonna get bad. Um, Benefits users, custom single sign-on, SSPR, conditional access, name some,
Yeah.
P1 is
Okay. So if they're
part of the
using that stuff that's in, I'm, I can't call it Entra ID. If they're using that stuff that's in Azure AD 1, then yes, I think this is all coming down to they're using stuff in Azure AD Plan 1,
yeah,
and everyone needs
basically.
to be licensed for it, and it's really that simple. And it's one of those deals, right? You can get away with it,
Right.
um,
But
but
it's
you
like
shouldn't,
being
right?
able to email out from shared email boxes. Like
Yeah.
you can do it, but don't get mad when they shut it off. You know what I
Well,
mean?
and that's an integrity thing too.
Oh
Like
yeah, for sure.
we should not be giving our clients that kind of advice. Like, here's what you have to do. That's it. Like, there's no gray area in this. There's a right thing and a wrong thing to do.
Okay, so let's go back to that ethically, morally, 100% principle based, no argument whatsoever. Let's go from a risk standpoint. Let's go to remember that first person we were talking about that was originally we agreed he was just a VAR, he or she was just a VAR, and then started giving advice on this questionnaire, right?
Mhm,
Um,
mhm.
at what point, because if the client says, I need 50 E3 licenses or E1 licenses and I need 10 P1s, Entra P1s, you know the math doesn't add up. But if you're just selling licenses, like where's the line? Where would you advise them? Would you warn them against them? Would you not make the sale? Well, like what's your I know I'm putting you on the spot here, but
No, it's
good
fine. It's fine.
conversation.
If I am purely selling and not giving any advice whatsoever,
Mm,
I would sell them. If there's any
same, same.
discussion about the engineering or helping choose or anything like that, because as far as I know, they're buying different quantities like to true up something, right? I
Well,
have
and
no
if you're not
idea.
managing their tenant, there's nothing
Yeah.
blocking them from buying three licenses direct either. You can do that on the
Right.
same tenant.
Right. But
Um,
I think if we're in any way involved in the like decision making of what to buy, then it becomes and right and going back to the risk perspective, the risk is very little. You're unlikely to ever get caught doing this anyway. But from a
yeah.
just ethical integrity standpoint, then yes, of course, I would
Oh yeah, I
start
wouldn't.
talking about
It's not worth
the
the
need to
headache.
do that.
Don't get me wrong. I see my keeper bill every month. I see like my Microsoft bill. It gets annoying. I absolutely
Mhm.
get it, and it sucks. But it's part of doing business. Like it's just one of those things you have to do. It's not a question. Um, yeah, I'm with you. My only to use the current parlance, my only ick here is that to sell the licenses, you have to have delegated permissions, right? Like You have to have permissions on the
Yeah,
tenant.
that's true. That's true.
So that kind of, and I
So
get
maybe
it.
there
I
is no
mean,
case.
but you get where I'm going with this, right? Like you
I
have
do.
access to their tenant at this point. Um, and if you haven't migrated GDAP, for God's sakes, migrate to GDAP already. Um, SIP makes it easy. But yeah, if you have access to their tenant, like it's a fuzzier conversation to say, I didn't know or I didn't advise them. I'm just selling them licenses because you do have visibility into the
Yeah.
license counts. You do have visibility to license users. Um,
And
that's a
so do you
little,
carry the responsibility to do that? Or do you take the stance that you're not going to get involved in selling things to clients you don't manage?
yeah. I see that goes down. I wonder where the risk is there. And we're not attorneys. Don't take our advice as legal advice,
Yeah,
please.
please,
There's
please
smarter
don't do
people
that.
for that. There are specific license people, like one of the guys I follow, Splaw guy or whatever. He did a lot of advisement for me when we were doing the Splaw licensing and the VDA. Um, yeah, I agree. I like don't get me wrong. I'm not going to pretend I didn't use a may have gotten a few hours of AOL free at some point with maybe a generator of something or other. I'm not going to say I've never, put a fake serial number into an old ass version of well, it wasn't even Creative Suite back then, Adobe Suite. Um,
Oh man,
I,
it is old.
I've done plenty of those things in my kid days. I'm not going to sell that to somebody. I'm not going to put my business on the line for that. It is worth
Yes.
to save them $50 to ruin my reputation and possibly God knows what the EULA and the Microsoft partner docs say. So
Right. If you're going to pirate something on your own machine, that's totally different than
right,
giving the advice to someone.
yeah. Let's see here. I think we got time for one more good story. We have uh,
Did you post Keith's latest comment? I like that one.
let me see, the savings doing Mickey Mouse. Savings doing Mickey Mouse IT is lost in labor, and labor is much higher than license fees. We talked about that a little bit, right? The software, creating software, creating workarounds, and suddenly you're the only person that can support it. Um, we talked about that last week,
Yeah.
and I agree 100%. It always bites you in the ass.
Yeah.
Um,
No shortcuts. Like so we always had an expression around the office that was make the client say no. Right. Always propose the right thing, the right way to do it, the extended warranty, like all the stuff that seems like a waste of money that you know is useful and important, and then make them say no to it. And don't get there and try to save them money on the sales call. If they don't want it, they don't want it.
yeah, 100%. So I'm going to bring up one that was actually reported a couple times. People didn't seem to care for this one, but Carl Palachuk posted a massive federal hiring for IT in 1 week, with a link to a ton of job posts that are going up. And his reasoning for posting this is that it happens more on sysadmin than it does on MSP, but people whine about their jobs. They complain about, my boss won't give me a raise. I have no career path. I'm burnt out from all these help desk tickets. If you're a business owner, and he even calls out business owners, if you're one of those business owners that's miserable, there are other opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so the reason I wanted to bring this up is I'm a huge proponent of that. I know I can make money doing anything, like literally anything. I'll figure it out. Life is too short to do anything other than what makes you happy, right?
Yes.
Like, I mean, don't get me wrong, we all get burnt out. Lord knows, I get burnt out. But if
You gotta
MSP
like
is not
doing
right
this
for you,
stuff to do
yeah,
MSP work. And the reality is that no matter how much we talk about it and how much we talk about making it easier, the especially the first couple years of an MSP career are just
mm,
extremely stressful, and there's no way around that. And if you don't love learning things and working with clients, you're just not going to be successful.
yeah. I it is really, it's like a trial by fire or like a boot camp that like never ends, especially MSP help desk. Um, I personally, I love the chaos. I love the nonstop, just figuring things out and kind of having to think on your
Yeah.
feet and the high volume of stuff. I know that's not for everybody. I get it. And I think when people get into MSP, they don't realize that's really what it involves for a good bit. I mean, don't get me wrong, you can plan around things, but I think a lot of the complaints come from they think it's going to be like they're leaving corp IT and they want to start their own MSP business and they realize, oh shit, this is hard. Like this is really
Corp
hard.
IT is a totally different world.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we've all done this, right? I can't tell you how many social events and family events and all that stuff I miss sitting at home patching something or
Yeah.
dealing with some incident. Right? That's just the way it goes. And if I didn't like doing this stuff, I wouldn't have done any of that.
I was doing a DNS audit when you pinged me today. That's why I had
Right?
forgotten. I was like so in the zone of going through our DNS records. If anybody ever wants to see a ridiculous amount of DNS records, look at what it takes to run a VoIP infrastructure. It is no joke. Um, but it is cool looking at your records and seeing, we're processing something like 25 million DNS requests a month. Some ridiculous number. All right.
What
So the
are
reason
most of them? Are they mostly like service records? Are they mostly A
there's a
records?
there's a shit ton of service records. Yeah, it's a few A records, a few C names, and then it's all the serve records
Yeah.
for
Okay.
all the data centers and TLS and yeah, fun stuff. Um, the reason comments like customers are stupid or we own the network or profanity at my MSP, negative self-talk. Um, so let's touch on this. Something I like to refer to my company as a fish tank, and I like to because I'm very cautious about who I bring in, about how they're going to affect everybody else. And in the businesses I've owned over my years, I've realized somebody with a bad attitude can infect the whole fish tank.
Hmm.
Um, you get that one person that's just like, I hate customers, customers are stupid, and that kind of just bleeds into others. And you get people that are genuinely happy or generally happy or generally, yay customer, and suddenly that'll kind of weigh on them and it'll color how they handle the next ticket for that customer.
Yes.
So you need to be very careful. There's a fine line between allowing people to vent and giving them an outlet and supporting negative interactions, I guess. Have you ever dealt with that?
All the time. And there's a corollary to this, and that is something that most MSPs are not good at. If you truly have a customer like that, fire them,
Yeah.
fire the customer. And I don't know why it's a difficult thing. Um, but if you have like this kind of customer that like the dread comes on when the phone rings and the caller ID shows up, just get them out of there. It's just
Yeah.
not worth it for anyone. It's not worth any contract price because it'll bleed over into the next interaction with
Oh, for
someone you
sure.
do like.
So did you have at Iconic or in your previous career, did you have like a method for like if you had a customer that's pissing everybody off or pissing a certain person off, like did you have any kind of processes to how to identify that to management?
We would have a frank conversation with our primary contact of the customer, and really it was about respect. And it was like, you expect respect from us, and we also expect that to everyone from me all the way down to the level one support guys, right? And
Yeah.
if it didn't change, then we would get rid of them. Like that's simple as that.
Yeah,
Um,
I had plenty of those coming to Jesus conversations with
right?
clients. It was one of those things of, and sometimes it's unfair a little bit because sometimes a second voice will get a different reaction from the client than the first one. Like, and I used to get that with escalations all the time. Customers pissed off at a tech, and maybe they're going a little too hard on the tech, and I'd get the call, and the person calms down either because it's me or just because it's a second voice, and I gave them time to pause and think. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm not saying you drop the client at the first bad interaction,
I don't know.
right?
You fire everyone.
That's crazy. But when it's systemic, and that was kind of the litmus test was when
Yeah,
our support desk guys saw the email come in or the caller ID come up, and you would just get this sense of dread came
yeah.
over,
You'd see the
and we
shoulders
had
fall a
some
little
like
bit.
that, and
Yeah,
and that like when it starts impacting our guys to that point, that was when we really seriously thought about dropping them, and in cases did, right? If it didn't
yeah,
get
yeah.
better, if it didn't improve.
We had an interesting process where if somebody identified a client, that everybody in the company was free to nominate anybody for termination. Period. Any client for termination, I should say. And if they did, we'd look at it logically. We'd gather as a group at the next weekly staff meeting, small enough we could do that, right? 20 people,
Yeah.
whatever. And we discuss the client, we discuss the revenue publicly, among the team. We discuss the ticket load, we bring up the reports, but we'd get the input from everybody, and the company would weigh as a whole as to how we were going to handle it.
So it was
Um,
a nice check, right? So you could
yeah,
differentiate between someone was having a
emotion,
bad day
yeah,
and
yeah.
this is
Or
a
is this
real
a
systemic
repeated
issue.
100%. Something we've adopted since is we have a checkbox we use Salesforce now, but we had this when we were using Manage for flag for management. And it was basically a red flag policy of if something happens where somebody's upset or something goes wrong, we mark it because it's an outlier ticket. We want to make sure management's aware of it, even if nothing happens afterward, just so we know that interaction happened.
Mm-hmm.
But those were key for these conversations for saying, okay, well, 5 times in the last year, management's had to talk to the person about not berating any of our staff. No, I mean, I wouldn't even let it get to 5 if they're berating the staff, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and it was a nice thing because the team as a whole, they had ownership in how the decision was made, and almost always I would abide by whatever the team decided. Because my team first, it has to be that way, right? Um, and many times, just as many times they'd jump in and say, yeah, it's not that serious, maybe we're just overreacting, we don't really need to do anything. And it was a cool exercise every time it happened, but it gave them an outlet to vent too, you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
I
um,
really like the nomination idea. It makes somebody feel like they have a voice or that they're heard and
yeah,
that they have some kind of control over what happens as opposed to, complaining to the guy next to them and nothing happens and the customer just keeps calling over and over. That's a really good idea.
it's nice because it gives, like you said, it gives them the ownership, and it also makes them feel heard. Let's be honest. I sit in my chair. I have the easy job. I get to see the bank account go up when we cash the checks. We send the invoices out. I don't have the day to day interaction anymore. The team does, right? They're the ones that get affected when something negative
Yeah.
happens. And I've had those conversations over the years. Almost always with MSP clients, very, very, very few with voice clients, but with the MSP clients of like, hey, look, we don't want to fight here. It needs to be a symbiotic relationship. Everybody's got to respect each other. I get you're going to get frustrated. We're going to get frustrated, but we got to work respectfully. And if we can't do that, maybe we need to examine, separating amicably. Um, and just that alone, putting that on the table with the client was almost always enough to get the client to like calm down. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
realizing that the IT team is not like a group of people to be stepped on. You know what I mean? Um, and it worked out well. I'm not saying it was perfect. There were some clients we eventually had to fire regardless, but it was a nice thing. It
No,
was a cool thing.
that's a good point though. Like we have had clients where I think I've said we never had contract commits or year-long contracts or anything. It was all month to month, and we had clients take us up on like, yeah, let's part ways at this. Like it's just not working anymore, and that was fine with us, right? Let's leave
Yeah,
on good or semi good terms before this deteriorates.
yeah. Yeah, Keith brings up a good point. I don't know about that's a fantastic record, 30 years of or
That's impressive.
yeah, but he talks about the long courting before getting married, and that was one of the things. Like, if I ever had a presentation, like your sales process, right? Like your discovery or whatever, and if I had one of those where like in my sales presentation they're ready to sign on the spot, that was always a huge red flag for me. I mean, we're talking 30, 40, $50,000 a year.
It's a big deal.
It's a big deal. Like, I want you to think about it. I want you to be 100% before you come back, because the old thing of easy come, easy go, right? Like, they sign and they're gone the next second. So, yeah, we usually gave a cooling off period before going, and we'd set the appointment. I say we, it was me mostly.
Yeah, yeah.
I'd set the appointment for a follow up. Present the presentation now, proposal now. Specifically, tell them we're not signing today. I'm giving you some time, and I'm going to. Hey, babe, I'm going to, we're going to have another appointment in 2 or 3 days to get this done. That way,
Well,
give them time to come up
especially
with questions.
I'm guessing we always were too. We were always the highest, if not the second highest
Oh, yeah.
quote they would get. And if anybody wanted to sign right then, that was a serious red flag. Like,
Yeah.
Did
I
you
mean,
did you churn through every other MSP in town first? And we
well,
had some that did that too.
oh yeah, oh yeah. I love those, especially don't get me wrong. It was one of my favorite things in the world when they would say no to our proposal today, and then they come back 6 months later, and we're like, we really should have gone with you, and that's the best feeling in the world, honestly. And they
You
make
ever
the
get the
best
ones that
clients, you
like
know.
occasionally you talk to the outgoing MSP and like the tech will have a candid conversation with
Oh
you,
yeah.
like, good luck, guys.
Oh, I've done those. I've done those where I've handed off, and I haven't got enough. In Miami, it's one of those things where, like, in Miami, nobody trusts each other, unfortunately. So, even in one of our offices, the office where I'm normally at, it's a bay of warehouse office space, and there's an MSP four doors down to my right. Um, to this day, they won't let any of my people in their office, like, not to say hi, not to anything, because they knew we were an MSP. Like, it's
Yeah.
that kind of Miami is very much like that, unfortunately. Um, so we didn't get a lot of communication from former MSPs, but I always did the opposite. When we were handing somebody off, I gave them the good, the bad, the everything, so they were prepared. I mean, what's going to happen? It's not like I'm getting the client back. I'm handing it over. That deal is done. I want the other MSP to be prepared so the client can be, taken care of. Um,
You might get him back one day, right? That happens
that does happen.
all the
Yeah.
time. Not all the time, but it certainly happens. They come back a year or 2 years later.
I with very few exceptions, when they would come back, I'd almost always say no. Um, it's one of those. It wasn't an ego thing at all. It wasn't that. It was. It was very much a. Usually, if they left, there was a reason or two they left, and unless I was 100% certain that was resolved, because let's be honest, clients that are 100% happy and everything's going great, those aren't the ones that are typically leaving, right? It's
Yeah.
somebody that had something internally or making their own decisions and not advising you or whatever. Something was going on in the background you didn't know, or you were screwing up. That happens too. I mean, Lord knows I've screwed up enough, but like,
Yeah. Depends
but
on why they left, right?
it depends. Yeah. If
If it was purely price, like, hey, these guys can do it cheaper, and they
yeah,
realized later there wasn't the same offering, and that's why it's cheaper, then
oh,
those
I take
were
those
okay with
back.
coming back.
Yeah, I'd take those back. They appreciate you more. They're good. Like I remember when I took back that they had been purchased by a larger company, and the larger company had internal IT, and we worked with them over, I want to say, 8 months. It was a large company. It was they supplied plumbing supplies to cruise ships, so it was a global company.
Mhm.
Um, and whatever. And so I worked with their IT, helping them hand off and doing stuff. And it took like a year to hand off to their internal IT. It got to the point where I was like, are you guys ever going to take over? And it was, so finally they did. And fast forward 6 months later, their director of IT came back and he's like, look, we had a really great experience with you and realized you guys handled things really well. And I think there could be a better relationship together. And it turned into commits and worked
Oh,
really
that's
well.
great.
Um, and you do whatever. I like to say, do whatever is going to let you sleep well at night. You know what I mean? And
I do. I like that. I
yeah,
like that phrase.
and I think that's probably a good moment to end on end this
It's
episode.
perfect. No,
It,
that's good. That's good advice. It's actionable.
I will tell you the best advice I ever got was from my daughter. She's 24 now, but she gave it to me when she was like 14 or 15. I'm going to assume she heard it somewhere else and then she repeated it to me. But she said, "Don't do things you're going to have to apologize for later." Um, and that whole think before you do thing. And I was like, damn, that's pretty freaking smart from a 15-year-old.
Right.
And it kind of stuck with me for the last 9 years, you know?
I like
So
this.
yeah, yeah. So
I'm
we
gonna remember
give you some nuggets
that
of wisdom.
sleep at night thing. Yeah, that's a good one.
All right, man. You got any plans for Labor Day?
No, not too much. So we had my niece and nephew over Friday into Saturday, and I think I mentioned they're like tornado
Oh
age,
yeah. I
and
saw your cats.
yeah, and so we're recovering from that
Yeah.
incident, right? So I have no kids, and we have no plans to have kids. We just can't take the chaos and pandemonium, so we'll be doing
Yeah.
nothing tomorrow.
Rentals are the best. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like I have my 10-year-old, I love my 10-year-old, I love my 24-year-old. But I have two nephews now that are both like they were both born in the last 4 months. Um, those are fun. Like you get them, give them back, you're good. But yeah, I saw your cats hanging out. It's funny because I have twin cats. The black and white one, we have a bunny cow, looks exactly like yours. His name is Thunderclap. We call him TC, and then we have an all black one named Wednesday. That's my wife's cat. So,
Yeah, yeah, they look like my cat. They look like what my cats will look because they're kittens still. They look like
oh wow,
exactly
they're
what they'll look
big
like.
for kittens.
Yeah, they're one's a year old, one's like 9 months old.
You cool if I? Oh, I don't even know where the hell you put the picture.
Yeah, you can share it if you can find it.
I don't remember where you put it. We're in too many circles together. I'll share it later. Maybe I'll share it next week. But all right. Until next time, everybody. Thanks for hanging out with us. I appreciate you, or we appreciate you, and thanks for keeping the
I don't.
conversation fun. And until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.